Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cap and Gown. I'm Rachel Phillips-Beck, VP for Student Success at Ferris Resources. I am not joined by anybody for this first half of our show. Matt is at a conference, and so I am going to just talk to you all, even though I feel like I'm just talking to myself. Also, we are having terrible allergies in Texas, so I have a cough drop, and I have lots of things to drink. And hopefully my voice is not too raspy for you to enjoy the time that we get to spend together. I'm super excited today. We are going to introduce Camryn Branch, who is our student success specialist. Really happy for you to learn about her and her college career. We have a couple of things we have to do first. First of all, next week is Thanksgiving, so we will not have a show next week. And then the week after that, on December 3rd, we're going to do our recap of the year. So lots of things for us to think through and talk about over the last 12 months, things that have happened. Very excited about that. We're going to put some punctuation on our curiosity theme. So it's been such a fun theme for us to have this year. And we've been brainstorming about what 2025 is going to hold. So we'll unveil that on December 3rd. In light of the curiosity theme, we have two things that we do at the beginning of every show. One is that I tell you about my Google searches, and the other is that we give you curious facts about something. So since Matt's not here today, I'm going to have to do that solo. I do have to be honest about my Google searches, though. A lot of them are about Christmas presents, so I can't tell you those because you never know who might be listening. But here are the ones that I can tell you about. I just searched hot pot, because we have a new hot pot restaurant in Abilene, and I was reading reviews about it, and it seemed very stressful. So I was Googling on YouTube, how are you supposed to eat hot pot? I think I have it down now. I've got all of the good tips. Very excited to try out that restaurant. I also Googled Pecan Tree Tunnel Drive, which is I'm driving to Arizona for Thanksgiving, and there's a really pretty part of the drive that has the road overhung with pecan trees. So we're going to drive through that. Also related to that trip, White Sands National Park, where you can rent sleds and go sledding in the sand. That's amazing. So I'll have to give you an update on that when I come back. Also, flea market name origin, which you might be interested to know. A flea market comes from a French term, which is actually like flea jumpers, because fleas would get into the upholstery of stuff that people are selling secondhand. And so you just were like guaranteed to bring home fleas from the flea market. So you're welcome for that. And lastly, the city of Potosi, which there's a little town right near here named Potosi. And I was listening to a podcast and they said this woman was living in Potosi. And I was like, was that around here? You might be interested to know that. There are 33 Potosis in the world, most of them in South America. The most famous one is in Bolivia, but there is a Potosi in Nevada, Wisconsin, Missouri, Pennsylvania, and Texas. So those are my Google searches for the week. Not too strange. I've had some ones that are a little bit more odd in the past, so I feel good about those. Now, Matt usually does curiosity for us. He's gone, and I couldn't find his book. So I'm going to give you some curious facts about Thanksgiving. First of all, 212 million turkeys are eaten on Thanksgiving every year. About 88% of Americans eat turkey on that holiday. Californians eat the most turkey, and Butterball answers 100,000 turkey cooking questions via their Butterball turkey hotline every November and December. I've never used that hotline, but I think it's genius. Like the idea that you could just call like what I would imagine would be your grandmother and be like, I'm putting this turkey in, I don't know what to do. I think it's a great idea. Good job, Butterball. Next, John F. Kennedy was the first president to let a Thanksgiving turkey go, followed by Richard Nixon, who sent his turkey to a petting zoo. George H.W. Bush is the president who formalized pardoning the turkey tradition in 1989, and all of the presidents since then have continued that tradition. Okay, just a couple more for you. Did you know that Thanksgiving is the reason we have TV dinners? So in 1953, a Swanson employee accidentally ordered 260 tons too much turkey. And they were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this? It took up space in 10 refrigerated train cars. And one of the salesmen was like, hey, we should just prepare it all and package it with sides in an aluminum tray. Call it a TV dinner. Swanson sold 5,000 TV dinners in 1953, and the following year they sold 10 million. Isn't that amazing? So thanks, Swanson, for that. Jingle Bells was originally a Thanksgiving song. It was written in 1857, either in Medford, Massachusetts or Savannah, Georgia. There's a little bit of a claim issue there. But it was originally called the One Horse Open Sleigh. And then in 1870, it became associated with Christmas music. And finally, Americans take in about 4,500 calories at their Thanksgiving celebrations, according to the Calorie Control Council, which is quite a bit more than you should, but it's one day a year. I think it'll be okay. All right, that takes us to the State of the Union. All right, I forgot to say, it really is a group effort today. When Matt's here, normally he makes coffee. He's not, so Rebecca brought me coffee so that I will be caffeinated for our State of the Union and my discussion with Camryn. Also, she heard me coughing from the other room. She brought me a cough drop. So I feel like it's going really great here. We're checking all the things off the list that we need to take care of. All right, FAFSA. I have good news for you about FAFSA, which doesn't always happen. The 2025-2026 FAFSA is on track to launch ahead of its December 1st deadline. The Department of Education says likely around November 22nd, but don't quote them on it. That's not like a for sure. That's what they're thinking. So far, more than 14,000 students have completed the FAFSA. About 1,800 colleges have received 81,000 student forms. If that trend holds, about 3.5% more students are on track to receive financial aid than last year, even before the official launch. So that is really, really exciting. Feels like they've got a lot of their bugs worked out. But also, the U.S. House of Representatives on Friday passed the FAFSA Deadline Act, which would enshrine an October 1st as the mandatory deadline for federal student aid forms launch every year. So currently, right now, it is January 1st. They're going to move that back. North Carolina Republican Virginia Fox, the chairwoman of the Education and Workforce Committee, called the bill a necessary measure to protect the future of such students by enforcing deadlines, ensuring transparency, and making certain that families receive the aid they depend on to make college accessible. This is pretty amazing. This act passed by broad bipartisan support on Friday, unanimous vote of 382 to 0 to get that passed. So clearly there's a obvious mandate to get FAFSA where it needs to be. And I'm really hopeful about what it's going to look like for this coming year. All right, I love this, you guys. This is an article outside Higher Ed Drive about how New Jersey has a new initiative to bring back students who are stopped out. So students who left college with some college, but not a credential. They found 8,600 stopped out students, and 18 colleges in the New Jersey system received $1.6 million in grants to help those students. What that does is it covers things like unexpected expenses or parking tickets or application fees. This is a huge population. So as we're thinking about enrollment shrinking and you're trying to figure out where are we going to get more students, the U.S. has 36.8 million working age adults with some college but no credentials in the mid 2020, which is when the survey was taken. That's a 2.9% increase over the year before. In New Jersey, nearly 75,000 residents have completed some college but not earned a credential. So we're seeing this in a lot of different states, North Carolina, California. In New Jersey, the re-enrollment initiatives has led over 350 students to graduate who previously had stopped out, which I just want to pause on that for a second. 350 students who did not have a college credential because of this initiative now are able to go and say, I have a college degree, really capitalize on what that means, get different jobs, be able to have kind of just a different family tree. And so it's a really powerful initiative that I think is going to make a huge difference, not just in schools enrollments, but in individual students' lives. So I love that. I think it's really amazing. All right, I've got 3 more for you. The first one comes out of the Hechinger report. It talks about a trend that they're like, I don't really know if colleges want everyone to know this, but it's actually getting much easier to get accepted into college. On average, colleges and universities are admitting a larger proportion of their applicants than they did 20 years ago. The median acceptance rate at a bachelor degree granting university and college was 7.6 percentage points higher in 2022 than it was in 2012. So that doesn't count schools that are open admission and take 100% of their applicants, but they're saying it's really interesting. 45% of 18 to 29-year-olds think it's harder to get into college than it was for their parents' generation. But in fact, 87% of nonprofit 4-year colleges in 2022 took half or more of the students who applied to them, up from 80% in 2012. So 87 to 80%. And then it just goes through and says, here are some differences for different schools and their acceptance rates. It's pretty remarkable to me how many, what the jump is in their acceptance rates. Only 33 colleges or universities nationwide took 10% or fewer of the people who applied. So those are obviously very elite schools, but in general, schools are saying we're going to accept more students that are applying to us. And the point this article is making is that actually it's really helpful to tell that to students so that they won't be stressed out, so that they can kind of settle down a little bit and have confidence in their application to schools. You guys, there is an article in the Chronicle. It is called Here's Smarty Pants Home for the Holidays. It is a great read about what it's like to be a first-generation student, not just an undergraduate student, but also if you've gone on to get your master's or your PhD, what it's like to come home for Thanksgiving. And this disconnect among students when they come home for the holidays, where it's like the parents don't understand what they're doing. It's very awkward. Parents don't know what questions to ask students. They feel like they are in this world in college where they have a lot of independence, and then they go back home and they're being treated like they're, have just been away and now they're coming back and they're a son or daughter, a little kid again. Also a really rich conversation in this article about how people from working class backgrounds really understand work and they understand salaries. And so the idea that you would go to school for 4 years, 6 years, 12 years is very, very confusing. And a lot of times parents don't know what to ask. They're just like, hey, how are our classes going? They're going great. Okay, thanks, bye, right? So I bring this article up for a couple of reasons. One is you have an opportunity the end of this week and maybe a couple of days if your students don't skip next week, Monday and Tuesday, to talk to them about this sort of third culture piece where you come from a family and you go away and you learn things and you're changed. And then you come back to your family and you're not going to be exactly the same person. You've had experiences that they haven't had that it's hard for them to understand. And so helping students know how to talk to parents about that. Because the point this article makes is a lot of times it comes from insecurity from parents. They just don't know what to ask. They may feel like, now you're elite all of a sudden and we're just, you're coming home to your working class family. So leading students through understanding how to have those conversations and why their parents might not know the right questions. And then also if you have a parent liaison, I love the idea of saying, hey, when your student comes home this first Thanksgiving, remember, there's going to be questions about, is it worth it? How are you doing? How are your grades? There's a lot of struggle that goes on around the Thanksgiving dinner table when you're having those conversations with families in general, much less a family that maybe you're, have gone out and done something that they haven't done before. So I think there's a lot of really interesting conversations to have with our students around that. Also, this article, Bailey and I were talking about it. It's just super helpful to get inside the mind of some of those students and their parents and better understand what that experience is. So that's a great one for you to check out. And then the last one I have for you actually comes out of the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning out of Indiana University. I would subscribe to their newsletter. They do so much great work about how we can help our teachers teach better, how we can help our students learn better. This one is around how you build your syllabus. And I just want to call out, it's a pretty long article, so I'm not going to go over all of it. But I love when somebody says, like, hey, here's a really simple thing that you can do that will change the way your students experience your class. So one of the things they do is they say, you need to make sure that you make your syllabus learner focused. So we're not going to talk about the language of what I'm going to teach you, what content is going to be covered. Instead, we want to create a syllabus that focuses on how this class is going to help you develop your skills and your intellect. So their example is, you might have a participation policy in your syllabus that says, I will take attendance every class session. Attendance is required. You are allowed 2 unexcused absences before your grade starts to become affected. For every 2 unexcused absences after these 2, your final grade will drop by 2% for every missed class. No classes can be made up. If you are more than 10 minutes late, you are counted absent. Okay, I feel like that's pretty standard language. They're like, hey, if you flip that to be more learner focused, you would say, participation. As part of this class, you will practice defending your viewpoints using evidence and responding to your colleagues' point of view. To do so, it's important you attend class and contribute your brilliant thoughts and voices. Because life happens to all of us, you have 2 unexcused absences. After these 2, your final grade will drop by 2% for every missed class, because not attending class will greatly affect your ability to reach your learning goals. If something arises and you need to miss more than 2 classes, come talk to me. Right? A really, really simple change, but it's a nice way to say, I'm not just being bossy about this. There are reasons why I want you to come, because it's going to help you in what you're doing. So talk about what students are going to learn to do rather than what the course is going to do. Make sure you include campus resources and discipline-specific resources for students experiencing struggles, which you guys know I've been preaching forever. Like, put your whatever you call Ferris 360 in your syllabus. It's a great resource for students. I might refer you. I'm going to tell you, and then we want you to go see Sarah, and she's going to help you, right? The last piece I'm going to highlight here is include warm and encouraging language. So instead of students must comply with the policies and practices outlined in the syllabus, failure to do so will result in grade consequences for the student, you could say, these course values were designed to help you reach our shared learning goals. They will also help lead our discussions. We will talk more about communication guidelines during our first meeting, right? So it's a great one. There's a bunch of checklists in there that you can go through just to assess whether or not your syllabus is creating a welcoming environment, right? Like, you are invited versus what we always say, which is you're in trouble if you don't do these things. So great article to check out. All right, that is the State of the Union, which is great news because it means I get to welcome Camryn Branch to our episode. Hey, Camryn.
Rachel.
How's it going?
It's going good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we were just talking about, you're in Texas too, and we're having very strange weather. I think it's going to get down to 30 something tonight. So hopefully it will kill all the things that are making us all sick and we'll be in good shape.
Yes, I hope so.
All right, so let me introduce you. Right now, you're a student success specialist at Ferris Resources. You've been with us for about 2 years, started as an intern on the retention intelligence side of the house. And I want to talk today about your journey in college. You and I were laughing about, you're more similar to Callie, and like, we've got these superstar people who are like just doing such a good job in college. And it's so good for me to be reminded, like, oh, there are people who like had great challenges and great support. And it's such an important voice, I think, for our listeners to hear. So I want to set up this conversation by talking about challenge and support. So I'm always giving myself a thumbs up about everything I'm saying. Okay, so you guys know challenge and support is this idea that our students are going to develop when they have difficulties that push them into a place where they're like, I don't know if I can do this, right? And at the same time are receiving the kind of support that they need in order to succeed. So our colleges do this by, making classes really rigorous or providing leadership opportunities for our students. The hardship is when our students are too challenged or they don't have enough support, and then they can be really frustrated and withdraw and be like, this is stupid. I can't accomplish this. So we want to think about this optimal environment of how do we lead you out into the deep end, but not so deep that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm drowning and I'm never going to go out into the water again, right? It's such a good frame for your experience because you had all of these places, really, if we think about scaffolding, like this step up of your experiences where someone was like, hey, Camryn, I think you can. And you were like, you really? Yes. And then you took the step and then someone else was like, hey, Camryn, I think you can. So I think it's a great framing for our conversation. Can you tell us about your first experience of being encouraged to take on a leadership role in college, and what was your kind of initial reaction when a professor suggested that to you?
Yeah. So my first experience was just right after my freshman year of college, and I had just finished taking an accounting class. And so my accounting professor reached out to me and asked me to become his tutor for that class for the next semester. And so my initial reaction was like, I just learned all these things. Like, I don't know how I can teach these to other people. But it was kind of like, well, if he thinks that I can do that and, he's seen how hard I worked in this class, then maybe it is something I can do. So I don't know, I'll just try it out. So I said yes to it. And even though I didn't necessarily feel overly qualified for it, but it ended up being a really great experience and getting to work with students. A lot of athletes and international students were mainly who would show up consistently to tutoring. So it was just a good experience to learn, other people's learning styles and trying to figure out what is going to convey this message most effectively to them. One of the experiences I had with an international student was really one of the most meaningful interactions that I had. So I had been tutoring him that whole semester, and it was kind of the thing where I'm like, I don't know if I'm helping him at all. Am I confusing him more? Like, I'm not sure if this is helpful. And so something I was kind of worried about through that whole semester of tutoring him. But at the end of the semester, I ran into him on campus, and he told me he was able to pass his class, and he was just super appreciative of everything I had done to help him. And so that experience was super rewarding and made me feel like, oh, okay, like something that my professor saw that I could do, like maybe he was right. Maybe I actually can take on more responsibilities and leadership opportunities like this.
Camryn, it's so good. There's two things in there that I just want to camp out on for just a second. First of all, I love the sort of trickle down effect of Dr. Perkins being like, I see that you can do this, and you being like, I'm not sure. And then the outcome is not only that you're like, oh, I guess I can, but also that you have the opportunity to be part of this international student story, which is one of the most fun things about student development and academics, is that years from now, when they are telling like, and then I went to this school in the United States and I had my first accounting class, and thank goodness for Camryn who tutored me to be successful, right? It's just such a nice way of thinking about how our stories are woven together. And then in this case, Dr. Perkins to you, then to the student, makes this really interesting tapestry. So I love that so much. Okay, so how did this idea of mentorship and support that you receive from faculty or even staff help you overcome that moment where you're like, I don't really know if I can do this thing?
Yeah. So mentorship was super important for me in college. I had multiple mentors throughout my time, but Dr. Jessup is one that really sticks out to me. So I had taken a few courses with him, and he had asked me to become his teaching assistant for 2 years. And so that was one of those experiences where he just had a lot of confidence in me. he would just say, hey, can you grade these tests? And some of them were open-ended questions. And I was like, well, are you sure you don't want to look over this after I grade it? Like, I don't know. But he was like, no, I trust you. And so just kind of having other people instill that confidence in me that maybe I didn't have in myself in those moments was super helpful. And then he was also there to support me through that. So if I did have questions where I was really unsure of something, or he would assign me, research projects to help him with his research, he was always there to support me if I did have questions, so that I wasn't feeling so overwhelmed with the new responsibilities or new tasks taking on. So just again, going back to that challenge and support, I feel like he was a perfect example of that in my college experience, just to really support me and make sure that I knew, like, okay, I'm actually capable and I can do this.
Yeah, it's so good. It's like I talked with Sherry a couple of weeks ago about moving into this place of daring, which comes from a psychological sense of safety, which is like, it's okay for me to look stupid when I ask questions, or like to make mistakes, or to say, I don't feel confident, I'm not sure about this piece. And so it's funny, Camryn, I was reading, you and I didn't talk about this, but you did an internship at Mary Kay. And I was reading the review, which, first of all, let me just say, it's super impressive. Like you're like entered the intern competition, pitched a new fragrance idea. You're like, here's what it should smell like and how we're going to market it. And then you won the competition and received the Mary Kay Future Leader Award, which that's amazing. If only you got a pink car, it would be like the cherry on top.
I know. I was waiting for that.
Yeah. But one thing that you say in this article is you're like, what I liked about this internship was I learned I could ask questions, right? That it was okay for me to show up and be like, I don't know the answer to this thing, which that, like Sherry and I were saying, like the sharing of vulnerability, and then to be encountering kindness and generosity around that it's like, yes, that is what you should be doing. How would you know how to do all of the things, right?
Yeah.
But then also the confidence to be like, okay, I'm going to try. If you say so, I'm going to try to do this. So I really love that so much. What was your fragrance going to smell like?
It's been so long now, I can't even remember. I know amber was one of the scents in it. Because I had to do a lot of research on, fragrance notes, and that was something I had no idea about. I remember there was amber in it, but I can't remember the rest.
I like amber. That's a good start. That's a good base.
Yeah.
I also wanted to talk about something that is, I think I see this a lot in you, which is this idea of like, just pretend like you can do it. So, right. But it's a really interesting perspective, because a lot of times this happens to me actually pretty often with Matt, where he'll be like, we're going to do this thing. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that thing. Right. Like, I have no idea. And he's like, okay, well, pretend like you were going to do it. What would you do? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, then I would go learn this, and I would talk to this person, and I would all these sorts of things. And I think it's a really nice thing to say to students. Just pretend like you had to do it and you could do it. What would you do to figure that out? And I think I see that woven throughout your story, where you're like, okay, well, I mean, I guess if I'm going to be in charge of this, here's what I'm going to do. So
yeah, I love that perspective.
Okay. So the other thing that you did when you were in school is you were the president of your sorority. And I'm very curious about how you decided to take on that. First of all, you get elected, right? You have to run for it and get elected.
Yes.
Okay. So how did you decide to pursue that leadership opportunity?
Yeah. So it was just kind of something that I had interest in. And then through doing some other leadership roles like we've talked about, I felt like I had kind of worked on some of my strengths of being able to like advocate for students. Like as a tutor, maybe I'm advocating them for them in that way. But then through being club president, I knew I could kind of serve as that middleman between all of our members and administration, and just kind of wanting to be able to have their best interests in mind when we're making decisions for the club. So I was kind of interested in that. And then I think, again, all those roles that helped me with my problem solving, strong communication, active listening, and organizational skills kind of helped me realize, okay, maybe I can take this on. Because this was one of the first things where no one specifically approached me about this and said, hey, I want you to run for this. It was just a decision that I made on my own. And so when I was kind of reflecting back on this time, I was like, I didn't even realize how much those other opportunities had played a part in Having people see something in me and then being challenged in that area and supported to grow in those specific ways. So this was the first time where I was kind of like, I can do this myself and I want to do this. So it was a really great experience and a very challenging experience at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many things about that. First of all, it's really fun to think about it as the first, maybe not the first, but an opportunity where someone was not like, come on, Camryn. It's like you think about like a little kid, when you're trying to get them to walk and you're like, come on, you can do it. And then at some point they're like, okay, I'm confident I can do it. Like, I don't need you to stand by and like ready to catch me. Like, I am going to take the step forward by myself. So that's really fun to think about that path for you. But also you had somebody in your family was also was it your cousin was the president before?
Yes. She was president, like, I think 8 years before me. So it had been a while, but it was kind of the thing as a little girl. I saw her doing it and I just thought, oh, that would be so cool to do one day. But I never really knew if it was something I would be good at or even have the skills to do.
It's a really interesting example, I think, because we talk so much about modeling and so much about how hard it is to be the first one in your family to do a thing. But then once you've done that thing, then you've created this model for everybody behind you to be like, yes, I understand that. And you and I do have a similar experience in that the school that we went to, it's like our families knew and loved this school forever, right? And so it's really, really interesting to think about how the people who come before you create a path for you. And sometimes you veer off and do something different and create your own way. But I love that kind of modeling that comes. Camryn, we were talking about how hard it is when you're middle leadership, right? Where you're like, I have this club that I'm trying to represent, but then also I have like all the policies and the rules and we can't get in trouble and I have to toe the line. Can you talk about that experience a little bit?
Yeah, I think it was a really great experience and just learning how to, again, be the advocate for the students, but then communicate with higher up people and kind of help me develop professionally what the right way to communicate with them is. And so there was a lot of experiences that were overwhelming. And so another mentor that played a good part in that role was Amanda Pittman, who she was our club sponsor that year. And so that year they were kind of transitioning when they were doing pledging. And so it just happened to be, we had 2 pledge classes. So as soon as we finished rushing and doing pledging, we basically had to start it all over again. And so it was a really challenging experience and really stretched me in a lot of ways. But with Amanda Pittman, I felt like she would just be a safe place that I could go to in her office where I wasn't afraid to be like, okay, this event or whatever just didn't go how I planned. And I never felt like I was in trouble with talking through these things with her. It was just always an open space, and she was able to really encourage me and then also be an advocate for me in situations with admin, just to know that, I'm capable of doing this. And even though there are some things that maybe don't always go exactly how you planned, that it's okay to fail in those moments.
Yeah. It is a great example of psychological safety, right? Where like I can come and be like, it was a disaster. I don't know. Like, can we talk about what we're going to do differently in the future? And I think it's really, really encouraging to be reminded. I think when we work with students in higher education, we're so often thinking about the biggest things, which we should be, right? We've got strategic things and we've got processes we've got to work out. And we've got to make sure like there's some very, very big things. But also your open office door where a student can stop by and be like, do you have 2 minutes? Because it's been a disaster of a day is just as important as those really big things. And I can't tell you how often I talk to adults where we're like, it was one little meeting that I had with a person, or they remembered my name, or they said this thing to me that then I was like, okay, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be able to make it. Right. So I love keeping our eye on that prize. It's really a valuable lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So Camryn, you started with us. You started as an RI intern, so retention intelligence intern. And that really came out of, you were saying like, you didn't even want to do data. Like data stuff was not really on your list, right? You were, what were you, marketing and management double major, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So first of all, why data? Why did you get interested in data?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to Dr. Jessup, one of my mentors, and I had taken 2 courses with him, which were marketing research and consumer behavior. And as that kind of registration for next classes came along, he had talked to me and just said, "Hey, I really think you should take my data mining course. I think you'd be really good at it." And I was like, that sounds horrible. I don't think I would be good at that. So it took quite a bit of convincing on his part, but I was like, okay, I guess I can always try it. So I ended up taking that class, and that's kind of why I realized that I wanted to go into analytics, and just found it really interesting, kind of the story behind data. And so, yeah, ultimately just conversations with him after that class continued about data analytics, and kind of realizing that's what I wanted to do. So he was helping me get connected with an internship, and which is ultimately how I ended up interning with Pharos at my senior year of college. And so he was just really able to support me in that process and help me figure out, not only what am I interested in, but what am I good at?
Yeah. Well, you're a very interesting person, Camryn, because you started as a retention intelligence intern, then you were a retention intelligence analyst, and then I'm pretty sure it was Matt who was like, Camryn can also help our clients find the right solutions. So your title is Student Success Specialist. Can you explain what that means exactly?
Yeah. So Student Success Specialist, I'm helping students succeed, whether that's through the data, where I'm helping our clients figure out what students are not retaining well on their campus, or which students need more resources, and then also connecting us with new clients who might be in need of technology to be able to better support those students with having a tool like ours for case management and collaboration and reporting. So it is a really interesting position I'm in, to be able to see, the data side and how that works, and then be able to relay all that information to our clients and connect us with prospects as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I really love is that we, on our retention intelligence side of the house, everybody who works on that side loves data, but loves it for action sake, right? It's not just like, I can't imagine you and Viva and Matt sitting in a room talking about data and then just being like, there it is, now let's move on to the next one. Like, it's always about, how do we present this to our clients in a way that they can understand? How do they digest it? What are the actions that we're going to give them? And I think that's pretty remarkable, because a lot of times, if we think about like our student success funnel, right? I'm always saying you have people who love identify and love measure, and then the connect solve piece in the middle, they're like, I don't know, or vice versa. Like I will connect and solve, but those other 2 pieces. But what I really love about how we do retention intelligence is this is not just here's a report, but you actually are going through and saying, here are slices of students that if you'll invest your resources, they're going to do better and you're going to improve their student success. So I really love that.
Yeah, I really love that, and just getting able to, like year over year, getting to have those meetings with the clients, and you're rooting for them each time when you start working on a report. You like want them to see those increases in retention, and so it's super rewarding to be able to say, okay, here were the groups of students that we pointed out last year that maybe needed some additional resources, and then the clients that take that and really work with those students all year, and getting to see their really hard work pay off is super rewarding.
Yeah, because you get to have a meeting with them and be like, look, this is what we said, and you guys did this awesome job. I was saying, Camryn, when we were talking about this the other day, people don't know at Ferris how much we rejoice with our schools. Like, we have a thread in Slack, which is like, listen to what this school's done. It's so amazing. Like, record high retention. This is the population they've increased. And then also how gut-wrenching it is for us when we have to do a report where retention is down. And a lot of times we don't have the context of why, right? So it's like all of us are having these conversations of like, oh my gosh, it's down. What happened? And so often the school's not surprised. They're like, yeah, we had this really hard thing happen, or this, our funding got cut or whatever. But we do feel a lot of responsibility of like, yay, or I'm really sorry. What can we do to be helpful to you, for sure? Which is why I think you're very good at your job. Because if you just showed up and were like, yeah, sorry, you're down, people probably wouldn't like having those meetings with you quite as much.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, so as we're thinking about challenge and support and your experience in college, can you talk a little bit about how that has informed your approach to your data analytics and your sales at Ferris?
Yeah. So being challenged by my mentors in college was a huge reason why I felt like I was comfortable walking into new opportunities. I feel like that's really continued with my time here at Ferris, just having Matt and Viva and Shauna all be able to say, here's something that you're really good at with the sales opportunity. It was something that I was like, I don't know if I would be good at that, but they say maybe, so I don't know, I'll give it a shot. And then having them support me through that process has been super helpful. And then with QuickSight, which was a new technology that we started using a year or two ago, just kind of having to be like, okay, yeah, I can figure this out. And even though maybe I don't feel super confident in it, I'll try my best and have everyone support me along the way. So it's been great to continue having that mentorship experience here.
Well, I think QuickSights, I mean, you're underselling our experience with QuickSights, which is, okay, we're going to do this totally new thing, and literally no one on our team has time to figure it out. So Camryn, I mean, I remember our conversation where I was like, Camryn, you have to become the expert in this. And you're like, okay, which is another place where, I mean, what do I know? I've got confidence in you. I think you can do it. And you're like, all right, I guess if you guys feel like I can do it. And now you're our expert in that, right? You're the person that we go to and we're like, okay, we need this new thing. So it is really fun to see how that continues. I want to, at the end of our conversation, talk to our listeners, though, about how you can do that for yourself also, because not everybody is in a place that believes in challenge and support. Sometimes it's like, just stay in your lane. And I think, we do a really good job of being like, we get the people that we want on the bus. And then we just say like, okay, well, what can you do? What strengths do you have? Okay, we're going to plug you in over there also. But not everybody has that experience. And sometimes you have to kind of self-advocate for yourself in that challenge and support piece, for sure. All right. So as you think about the work you're doing in retention intelligence and analytics and higher education, how does that align with this idea of the leadership roles that you've had when you were in school?
Yeah, so just thinking back on my leadership experiences, I think a lot of it was revolving around supporting students, whether I really realized it at the moment or not. But then being able to now meet with our clients and say, here's the students that aren't retaining well on your campus, and then being able to have really meaningful interactions with clients and talking through, what can we actually do about this, is super helpful to build off of my experience I had with actually supporting students in a more direct way. And then just also being able to learn from other people on our team about student success and, how to actually do the student support work that maybe I didn't even know took place whenever I was on campus. So that's been a really great experience.
Yeah, Camryn, you embody something that we really love at Ferris, which is we take very seriously this idea that we get to work with people who are not always appreciated, right? They work really, really hard for their students. They pour out of themselves all the time. They're often working a lot of hours, and they're just really invested, because when you understand that the student is at the center, you're willing to do a lot of stuff for them because you want them to be successful. Yeah. And so we always take the opportunity when we get to talk to our clients to spend the first 5 minutes being like, I see you. You are doing a great job. Here are the places that you succeeded. I know it's really hard. I know this is what's happening in the semester, but I want to be an encouragement to you. And just as you're talking about meaningful interactions in those Spark meetings, being able to say, I don't know who on your campus is going to see all of the work that you did and see the increase that you've had in retention, but I see it. We all have been talking about what a great job you're doing. And so just keep doing what you're doing. Or conversely, where we're like, your input of students totally changed. And so now we've got to think of a new way to support them. And that's okay. We're going to get there. We're going to figure out how we're going to do support. So it is really nice to be able to pour into those people who we know are so busy trying to support our students. It's the best part of the job, I think. Okay, so if you had advice for faculty or staff about the importance of identifying and encouraging students to take that leap of faith to challenge them, what would you say about that?
Yeah, so my piece of advice would just be don't let potential go unrecognized. I think that is something that in my college, it pretty much formed my experience, just having people speak into me saying, I see this really great thing that you're doing, or I know you're really good at this. I think it's super helpful to just encourage the students when you see something great that they're doing. As I'm walking through demos of Ferris 360, with prospects, one of the student update forms that we have that I always like to point out is the outstanding student form, because we like for our system to be used in positive ways as well. But I just think about how much that really formed my experience, having someone just encourage me and point out things that they noticed I was good at, which gave me the confidence to take on new things.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's like catch people doing good. Right? Instead of catch them in trouble, like catch your students doing something good and then tell all the people, tell them, tell their advisor, tell their coach, tell everybody, like, you're not going to believe what an amazing thing Camryn did. And I think it does two things. One thing is that it obviously calls out strengths that you might not think you had. I don't think I said this to you before, but when I was doing career counseling, the thing that would make me most sad is when I would say to a student, what are you good at? Right? Like, what are your gifts? What are your talents? And they'd be like, I have no idea. And I would have to be very careful not to say, like, did your parents not tell you, like, wow, you're really good at, but sometimes students don't have that. So having somebody call that out in them is really, really helpful. But also it communicates to them, we see you. You are part of this community and we are paying attention to what you're doing. And so you can't slip under the radar. You're not going to be, if you don't come to class, I'm going to notice, right? It's a really nice way to be like, I see you. And I love when you show up in these ways. So that's such a good thing to highlight. Okay. I told you this was coming. So I was thinking about this challenge and support. And like I said, I was thinking about how nice it is to have people offer that to you. Sometimes you're not that lucky. Sometimes you might work in a place where everybody's really busy and burnout, or you just, everybody's feeling overwhelmed. And so I love action items. I think our action items coming out of this conversation, where we've just been reminded how important that challenge and support is, are for people to think about how they can provide that for themselves. So if you think about, I've never done a presentation at a conference before, or I've not had a leadership position, or I haven't joined a professional organization, or I haven't learned this skill that I'd really like to. We know that people are happier with their jobs when they're in the process of mastering something, right? So that comes out of, how do you name a challenge for yourself that if you could master would be really powerful? And then the support part of that is, who are the champions on campus who are going to provide that kind of support? So you think about mentors, advisors, your trusted colleagues, people who are really going to provide a safe space for you to say, that was a disaster. I don't know what I was thinking, right? Or, wow, you did a really great job of that. Let's talk about how we can do that some more. So I just think about, one of the things I love about higher education is that we have this rhythm of the academic year. And we are at the end of November, and we're going to do November. We're going to do Thanksgiving. We're going to do a couple of weeks, and then we're going to have Christmas, and then we start again with a new semester. And so my challenge is just to think about, what kinds of things could you challenge yourself to do next semester? Write those things down and tell somebody about them, and come up with the timeline and what you need in order to do that. Because it can feel like we have so much work that we feel overwhelmed. But some of our best experiences are when we're trying something new that, like you said, we would never have known we would be good at that thing. So I think that's a great action item for us to think about as we're going into the new semester. And Camryn, that means you have to do it too. Wait, does that mean
I will
do it too? Oh, shoot.
Yes, you do.
Myself homework. Why did I do that? It has been so fun to watch you growing over the last couple of years. And like I said, I really love the attitude of like, hey, Camryn, pretend like you have to be in charge of that. And you're like, okay. And then you just go and do a great job of it. So thank you for modeling that for so many of us. It's a really great, it's a fun quality to work around because you don't have to be worried that I'm going to say like, hey, Camryn, do this. And you're going to be like, no, I can't do it. It's impossible. You'll be like, yeah, all right, I'll try it. So thank you for that so much. And thank you for joining me. It's a little bit nerve wracking to have to.
Yeah, just a little.
Thank
you. I'm glad I got to join you today.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you guys have a great Thanksgiving. We'll be back week after next. It will be December, and we will be on the home stretch of the semester. So have a great day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.